This is the after party. Your hosts are the Great Order and No White Guilt. The crown winner of last week is a twofer. Both are wonderful Mr. Bloom and Rick Deckard, financially gifted $50 apiece to the protection of our white babies. Congratulations and thank you both so very much. In second place was another one of our heroes, the one and only Sloths, who financially gifted $30 to the protection of our most vulnerable members. And for that, we are deeply grateful. Congratulations to you, dear brother, and thank you as well. You may financially gift on Entropy when I get it up in just a moment at a cost of 15% to you, where you can also watch the stream and you can ask and vote on questions. And finally, you can financially gift on Cash App. Just descend into the description below for those URLs. Jared and I evenly share the financial gifts with our guests here on the after party. A quick announcement. The anti-whites are deleting our brothers and sisters' platforms and their channels and the like around the world like there's no tomorrow. Just the other night, Mark lost his D-Live channel, and Way of the World lost both of his YouTube channels. Way of the World is on BitChute and Library, and I'll share those links over the course of the stream. And if I can get a new link for Mark, I will share that as well. Now, today we are joined by the one and only Ilenia on tap. Ilenia, please introduce yourself to our esteemed community. Tell us where they can find you, and then Mr. George will take us into the conversation.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ilenia. I think you already know me from the video that we made like 2 years ago. If you don't remember me, it's no problem. I was the admin of the page Nordic Beauty, which was banned from Facebook in 2019. And from then on, I've managed the page Protect Beauty, which you can find on Facebook. I'm also a member of the association Pietas, which is a cultural association about Roman tradition, but also a cultural association about the esoteric traditional path of the Romans.
All right, and yeah, we're going to be talking about that and other things like what's going on in the world today. You were on July 2019. You also helped us celebrate our birthday just 1 week ago. But we do have a lot of new people, so it's okay if we repeat some of the themes that we discussed last July, specifically about beauty and why you ran the pages. But the first thing we want to talk about is this book. It's still relatively new, and we're all celebrating the beautiful accomplishment of this book. All three of us have pieces in it, the folk book. Yeah. So you have something that relates a lot of what you know about the ancient Rome and its virtue and what it created in its citizens. Yes, I have it next to me as well. Yeah. Here, you go 3 ways. It's all
everybody.
Beautiful book, and you have a wonderful essay, the 5th chapter.
Thank you very much.
You wrote.
You guys as well, anyway.
Thank you. And so we can talk about how you relate the virtue and how families were created in ancient Rome and the lessons that we need today. And specifically, your essay is called Fire, Sword, and Plow. And I know people are wondering what that might mean. That's a kind of a mysterious title. So we can begin with talk about all kinds of things.
Of course. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say that it's been an honor for me to be invited to be part of this project, as I wasn't expecting this invitation, but it was very pleasant, a very pleasant surprise. And this has given me the possibility, and I think it's given the possibility to you as well, to think once again about the importance and the essence of folk. Because many people in our communities may define themselves as identitarians or patriotic or nationalists or stuff like that. But what is the essence and what is the philosophical meaning as well of folk? What do we mean when we say that we are proud of being part of our folk and we are proud of the deeds of our ancestors? So I think that all of us have thought at least once about all these questions, and you can find the answer with your own critical thinking, or you can find the answers by reading the books of our philosophers. But I think that the answer is always to be found in the ancient writings, in the ancient wisdom of our forefathers. The view I've given is can be deemed as the view of an Italic person, but I think that the notions and the ideas that I'm talking about are indeed universal because they can be applied to different ethnos as well. So the title of my essay is indeed Fire Sword Plough, an Italic view about the meaning of folk. And this fire, sword, and plough for me are symbols that relate to three fundaments. These three fundaments are what create a folk. So we see that sword is related to the setting of a boundary intended as defense and strength. Then we have a fire related to family, related to love. And then last but not least, we have the plough. The plough is related to the cultivation, but it's not only related to the cultivation of a field, it's also related to the cultivation of love and respect towards the gods, towards the fatherland, and towards your partner, towards your spouse. So let's start by explaining my first point, so setting a boundary. So to understand its importance, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the myth of the foundation of Rome. So the myth of Romulus and Remus. So according to our tradition, the founding fathers of Rome, so the twins Romulus and Remus, were born in Alba Longa, and they were the sons of a virgin Vestal, Rea Silvia, who generated these two twins by making love with the god Mars. So these two twins were then they weren't recognized by the king Amulius because he was afraid that they would take power. So he just abandoned them on the bank of the river Tiber to die. But the god of the river, so Tiberinus, found them and gave them to the she-wolf, who fed them, and then they were found by a shepherd. So they just grew up as shepherds without knowing that they had these mythical origins, and that they were the rightful kings of the land. So when they became young adults, they become involved in a dispute between the supporters of Numitor and Amulius. In this process, Remus was captured and brought to Alba Longa, and both their grandfather Numitor and the king Amulius suspected his true identity. So Romulus, in the meanwhile, organized a group of shepherds to fight, and they went to Alba Longa. And during this period, they learned about their past, so Romulus and Remus. So they joined forces, and they tried to restore his grandfather on the throne after killing Amulius. So the twins returned and decided to build the city on their own, but couldn't agree on the location because Romulus preferred the Palatine Hill, and Remus wanted to build the new city on the Aventine Hill. So to resolve the dispute, they agreed to seek the gods' approval through a contest of augury. So Remus first sees 6 auspicious birds, but he is superseded by Romulus, who sees 12, and claims the divine approval for himself. Romulus then inaugurates the construction of a walled city by ritually furrowing the ground and thereby drawing the perimeter close to which the city walls are to be built. This sacred part is called Pomerium, which is the sacred boundary around the city of Rome, and the city is controlled by Rome. So what do we see right after? Remus wasn't happy with this divine decision, so he tried to cross the boundary, the sacred boundary that Romulus has set, and gets killed. Thanks to this myth, we can learn a lot of things. For example, we see how natural it is for the man to think of a boundary as a first natural law. So the boundary not only has a meaning in the physical world, but also in the metaphysical one. As we cannot cross a certain spiritual dimensions because we don't have the necessary consciousness, we don't have the permission from the higher spheres, we also cannot cross in the material world, so in our world, the boundaries if we are not allowed to. Nowadays, globalization and the elite at the power are doing their utmost to destroy this sacred principle of boundary and delimitations. So modern economy is based on a kind of vampirism that feeds on the energy and the vital essence of folks. So the vital essence that resides within the man, having as a result the destructions of folks, the destruction of families, and the abandonment of the man in isolation. So for this reason, a spiritual community goes in the opposite direction, thus being a great revolutionary act. For the Romans, the concept of boundary was also so important that they had a god called Terminus. Terminus is a Latin word which could be translated with limit in English. So a few days ago, on February the 23rd, we had a celebration called the Terminalia, which was a feast dedicated to this god, which is the divinity, as I was saying, of limits and boundaries. And I wanted to cite Ovid, the Fasti of Ovid, when he calls this, when he refers to this god by saying, "You delimit the peoples, the cities, the great kingdoms, and every field without you will be quarrelsome. You do not know intrigue, you are not corrupted by gold, you preserve with legitimate loyalty the lands entrusted to you." So Terminus is therefore the boundary on which is built and founded the order, the law, and the sacred that is sanctioned. So it is what distinguishes territories and humans. And I think that this explanation that Ovid gives about this god is truly magnificent and makes us understand how important it is to have a delimited land to bring order, peace, and prosperity to a people, rather than what we are experiencing nowadays. So that was for the first point. Tell me if you have any question.
Yeah, I think this is going to relate to what you're about to develop, but I always look to kind of the hierarchy and how the small level relates to the next larger level, and that relates to the next larger level. And so do you conceive of it where it's layers of boundaries, like the family is a boundary, and then the town, and then every level has its boundary, and it makes sense up until the nation, the people as a whole?
Yes, it makes absolutely sense.
And then
the people has
yeah, so that's essentially what you were explaining, is the sword part is protecting the boundary because you're in the title fire, sword, plow. And then
No, sorry,
no,
I'm not hearing very well.
Is the audio okay? Is my sound low?
Okay, now it's okay.
Yes. No, why don't you just develop then with the family and the fire and devotion to spirit?
Okay. Then I can continue with it. What about family and fire? I will continue by telling you a little bit more about the myth of Romulus, because in this myth we find everything we need to understand these fundamentals in the creation of a folk. Because what we saw in the first part was man fighting to setting this sacred boundary and founding a city. But what did this man need to continue? They needed a family, so they needed women. But in the beginning, when they founded the city was populated almost entirely by men. There was no woman. So what did they do? Basically, Romulus wanted to fix this problem. So he sent messages to the neighboring peoples, which were called the Sabines, of course, that you may know about. And there were other folks living in Latium, which are called the Ceninenses, Antemnates, Crustumines. He wanted to forge alliances with these folks through marrying their women, but they refused to do so. They didn't want to give their women to the Romans because they were afraid that Rome would become too powerful. So after a bunch of years of the founding of Rome, they decided to proceed in this way. Romulus held a celebration in honor of a god, which is the god Consul. And he invited these neighbor folks to come to celebrate together with them. And he decided, together with this man, to kidnap the Sabine women, but just the virgin. After the game was over, after all this celebration were over, the men were pretty, they were so happy they didn't care about anything else, so they didn't notice that Romulus, together with the others, kidnapped the Sabine women, which is the famous rape of the Sabines. So they took these women, but they had to treat them, like Romulus told his men to treat them with their utmost honor and respect, without any kind of abuse, forcing or violence. But in the general commotion, also a married woman was kidnapped, who was Arcelia, and became the wife of Romulus. So of course the men from these tribes wanted their women back, but after the women were treated so well by the Romans, they decided they didn't want to go back anymore. And after some quarrels, some fights against the Romans, which were always won by the Romans, they decided, Romulus together with his men, to integrate these other Italic tribes into the city of Rome, becoming the Roman folk. So what is important here to notice is that right after the foundation of a place, of a city, what you need to do is to have strong communities. These strong communities are formed by families. And it's important to understand that where there are healthy families growing healthy kids, when there is a healthy community, the laws will be just. Because if they were not, the folk would overturn it. Because the folk will be conscious enough to wake up and overturn a political assembly that doesn't work for the good of the people anymore. So without a strong community, when men and women are isolated exactly like they are nowadays, and in particular during this year of forced isolation, the controlling power of the masses has grew exponentially. I don't know about you in the USA, but in Italy, that's the case, making a small elite stronger than millions of men. So this process, of course, has been a long process, because it's not something that happened in in 10 years or something. It's happened in 50 or 60 years, because it's from the 60s onwards that that they are using the mass media, that they are using marketing and all in their power to brainwash us and our kids. They have used everything, these elites, to accomplish this result, to weaken our souls and our spirits. So on a side, they have, of course, used porn, which is whose horrific impact on people's life is well known from any point of view. Any psychologist or sociologist can tell you about the issues of young men and young women who live in a life where the only contact that they have with the other sex is just by watching these videos. So imagine like a young boy or a young girl in their teenage years using a computer to browse all the most disgusting stuff. They are going to waste their energy into nothingness. So all of these years when they are like 14 years old, 15 years old, and they continuously proceed with this brainwashing, and they continuously watch all this crap on the internet, will turn them into degeneration, like into decadent people, into people losing even their sexual identity, like it's happening in these last few years.
One thing I like in the that you wrote too is, again, to that notion of hierarchy, and it's always looking up to the next layer that inspires you or having an ideal. You said something to the effect of in the fire aspect that the only love beyond the man and well, there's the love between the man and the woman,
Mm-hmm.
and that feeds the community, as you were
Exactly.
saying. Because I heard it said elsewhere, someone put it this way, that a lot of politics begins with concerned fathers. A lot of politics grows out of just what the boundaries are of concerned fathers wanting to protect their families and community. And as you were saying, if there's health and homogeneity there, then the laws would reflect what's healthy for the people. So you're kind of giving this ripple image where from every level you see how every level affects the other. You see that the love of the man and the woman and the family is the fuel, and that's what is dedicated to the people. And we're going to talk
Mm-hmm.
about the etymology of folk and popolo, where we get the word populace, like you said. And then the only thing beyond that is looking to something divine that overlooks the whole thing,
Exactly.
transcendent, that is the gel for the whole thing.
Exactly, because as long as the man and the woman are able to love each other, to purely love each other, they are also able to love the divine sphere and to love themselves as well. And this relates to the third point, because after we say that the two fundaments of the creation of a folk are a boundary and a family, what should this family do to have a grow up, to see a grow in its folk, and what should they do to strengthen their folk? So once you have delimited the sacred boundaries of your land and you have built families within it, you have to show act of pietas, of piety, to allow wealth, prosperity, and peace to flow over your life and your country. Because by respecting the gods and the fatherland and your spouse, you will accomplish an act of pietas. And for Cicero, the maximum act of pietas was that towards the fatherland, which was called the pietas maxima. So imagine how important was the boundaries, the lands, the fatherland, and all the deeds of your ancestors for our ancestors, and how can we take care of it right now. So a community with no self-consciousness, without a spiritual guidance, and without any understanding of their inner microcosm and its relationship with the macrocosm, is a community whose destiny is to fall. So as long as we just identify ourselves with our bodies, while forgetting about the other bodies we are formed by, we will be nothing but pieces of skin and bones, born to produce, consume, and die. But life is more than that. Life is a constant proof and is a constant fight towards our inner demons and also our outer demons, our outer obstacles that are needed anyway to grow in soul, mind, and spirit. Because an awakened spiritual community can't be fooled by temporary morals, like the slave morality we are submitting to now. So to think that we are guilty because our ancestors have done this and that, and our glorious past doesn't belong to us but to somebody else, and we do not have any identity because identity is a social construct, we do not even have a sex because genders are fluid, then you can make weak people believe into this crap. But if you can't, you can't make strong communities believe that. Because the laws of Jupiter, so the laws of karma, are sacred and you cannot go against them. And if you see an elite imposing their brainwashing, their mind control through constant propaganda, you can't just stay still and look if you are awakened. Because this is unfair, malicious, this is a malicious deed, and we must fight against it. Exactly like we see in the myths of Perseus fighting against the Medusa, or if Ulysses fighting against Polyphemus. But of course, to be able to do that, we first need to purify ourselves from our own bad habits, from our bad deeds and from our Remus, which can be interpreted as a kakodaimon from a Greek point of view. So in this way, we will attract forces that will aid us in this fight that we are doing against the evil.
I'm curious too, like I said, to now get into for a moment the etymology of folk, popolo, all of these words that relay similar concepts. You talked about this in all of our European language. I had never heard of this before. So I appreciated this. I learned this is one of the things I learned from your essay, is that it actually relates towards like being full. I guess that makes sense with English folk, full, vol.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Reunited. It all of you. Well, you tell us. It's all about just giving this sense of togetherness, and that
yes, exactly. To be united, like to stick together. Yeah. In Italian, for the non-Italian speakers who are watching this, folk is translated into popolo, and which comes from the Latin word populus, which means to reunite. But other interpretations have also been given, like, for example, the interpretation of Mr. Mommsen and Momigliano, who see in popolo a word deriving from Proto-Italic and Osco-Umbrian, poplos, which means army. And this relates to the first fundament of setting a boundary. So, okay, we see that a folk is like an assembly of men reuniting and sticking together because of common interest, but it also means that in cases of attacks or violence, they are ready to be united to fight, because poplos had the meaning of army. There is also another Italian writer, but I couldn't find the specific source, so that's why I didn't cite it in the book, which said that the etymology of popolo is also related to a tree which is called pioppo, because when you see all these trees all after the others, they make you remember about the army, about an assembly like of armed men coming there together to defend the boundary. So, but I couldn't give it because I didn't find the correct book. So yeah, in popolo, we see a group of men and women united by common goals, by common genes, laws, culture, which are ready to fight in order to defend themselves from the enemy. And I really like this etymology and the reason why we are using this.
I was particularly struck by the relation of the word full, as if there's a place for you, like there's the idea of the people isn't complete unless you're there too. Every individual plays their part, and it fills the space that it is to be that people. It's a beautiful concept. There are people in the chat asking, as I said, we have new people all the time, so I'm sure there are a lot of people who didn't hear you live when you were on over a year and a half ago. They're asking a question, a loaded question, if you have social media. So why don't you review some of your experience? I don't know if any of you seen the very famous Facebook pages, Nordic Beauty, which was unfortunately taken down, and then Protect Beauty is the continuation. Ilenia started that page and is the admin. And we spoke a bit last time, but it's worth repeating because it's something all three of us are very passionate about. As Jason said on the last time you were here for your full episode, and I fully agree, something we talk about all the time. Beauty is actually a virtue. That's not something we hear in modern language a lot. We don't hear people put it that way, but beauty is a virtue.
Never.
Just looking at beautiful things can change your state of being. You celebrate the beauty of the European people. You post pictures of beautiful people, architecture, art. So why don't you tell us about why this was the space that you decided to enter and that you focused on beauty?
Well, because beauty, of course, is what attracts the most. When you look at a beautiful monument, when you look at a beautiful painting, when you look at a beautiful woman or at a beautiful man, you feel well, like you feel relaxed. You feel ordered. when you are surrounded by a dirty, ugly city, or you are surrounded by people who don't look like you at all, and when you are surrounded by all this mass media's propaganda about this subjective concept of beauty, which cannot absolutely be objective, while actually beauty is objective, then of course I decided to start by using beauty as an instrument to awaken people. Because even by just showing the picture, a random picture of a beautiful woman, there is an implicit question. Why would you want to see it die out? Why would you want to see it disappear? Why would you prefer to be surrounded by other people rather than your own? Of course, if you start by just speaking about political stuff or philosophical stuff, nobody's going to listen, because people are there sometimes they really don't want to get into it. But an image, a picture, has way more impact than an entire essay. Like you don't need to write entire books to answer to the question why it's important for the world to have different folks who look different, who have different cultures and different languages and different religions. Just show them a picture of a beautiful woman with a traditional dress from Austria, or even from other countries like, I don't know, Japan or India. Why would we want to lose that diversity and that beauty? And do you think that it's more powerful to show exactly like three women from three different continents with beautiful clothes, or to write like an entire book about it? What's going to have more impact to random people? I mean, imagine your average American person or your average European. I mean,
the beauty, without question, of the photograph, of the images, is going to absolutely capture the mass imagination without question. That's one of the reasons, of course, why they focused on you and they went after your Facebook page and wanted to take it down. But they knew that, and what we do in Going Free, what we refer to is exactly what you're talking about here. We refer to this as biospiritual harmony, so that every race of man has a biospirit that is distinct, just like everything else about the different peoples of man are distinct, and that the projection of the biospirit, simply understood as instinct, the projection of it in its aggregate is our culture. It's why white people make Western civilization everywhere we go, and Asian people make Asian civilizations everywhere they go. And so when you see this reflected back at you from your society, that's the feeling of harmony. That's the feeling of bliss. That's the feeling of wholeness. And when you are in these other places, though we can respect and appreciate and look at the creations and the architecture of different parts of the world by different peoples, and we can appreciate the beauty or the intricacy or whatever it might be, we don't harmonize with it. There's something that is disharmonious when we are among those things, even when we can acknowledge that there is beauty there, or there is some great intelligence perhaps in the creation of some of these things. So when we see what you're saying there, for example, when you say that you're talking about the beautiful dress of, say, three different women from three different biospirits, we might say, when you see that, and of course you see if you're a Westerner, if you're a Westman, a man or woman, one of us, a member of Western kind, and you see that beautiful white woman in that beautiful dress that was created by our people, projecting our biospirit, we have harmony with it. We can look at the beauty of the Japanese dress, like you were pointing out there, and think, well, that's lovely. That's a lovely thing. We'd like to see that continue. But we don't harmonize with it. And that's one of the reasons why I know they target people like you, because they know that they see our people across the totality of the West, look at the kind of images that you were putting up, and they were feeling that harmony. And they don't want you to feel that harmony. That's the issue. They want you to be in a discordant state so that you can be manipulated into buying their garbage, so that you can be manipulated into being victimized, And I'm loving this conversation. I mean, all the way, starting from the very beginning, when you were talking about, I guess it was Romulus and Remus, and they brought the women over. I guess they kidnapped, or they brought the women in, but then the women didn't want to leave. I have the same problem. So I mean, I thought this was a perfect conversation. But I'll toss it back. I think you're absolutely right. There's nothing wrong with when somebody writes a book about these things. I mean, there are going to be those who are going to sit down and want to dig into it in this fashion. But that's a tiny percentage of the population. That's not going to move the mass mind. That's not going to move the mass groups of people. It's going to be the kinds of things exactly, Ilenia, that you are talking about and exhibiting perfectly and beautifully. It is indeed virtue, or beauty absolutely is a virtue. It's as important as law and order. It's as important as truth. It's as important as justice. And we need it because it is not just something that is, and this is the last thing I'll say, and I'll toss it right back to you. It's not something that is just objective. We as Western kind, we always like to put things up in this objective cloud. And we believe that only if it's up there, universal, does it then become legitimate. But the reality is, and it's true that it's a virtue, and it is there in this objective cloud above us. But at the same time, we feel that wholeness, we feel that completeness when we see that beauty from our people. And that really is what the anti-whites don't want. They want to rob us of that. That's another way to victimize us. By taking away the beauty that you were providing, they were victimizing everyone who harmonized and felt that the salubrious effects, the healthful effects of seeing those images, by forcing instead what we see across the West. I know it's happening in Italy as well today, where you see these models go up, and God love them. I mean, maybe for their peoples, they are lovely looking. Maybe for their peoples that they came from, they are the perfection of what they would consider beauty. But for us, it's discordant, it's errant with our biospiritual aesthetic. And so we go into, like I had somebody send me, and I'll just pass it. And last thing I'll say, I had somebody send me images from a Target. I don't know if you all have Targets or the equivalent thereof. It's just a big box store, sells a kind of all junk from all around the world. Mm-hmm. And every single image in the advertising were wonderful non-white people with different biospirits than ours, and they looked very different. Some of them very happy looking, some of them quite larger than you would expect a model to be. And again, it's probably wonderful for those peoples from those communities, but for us, I definitely could imagine walking in and then walking right out of that place, not feeling like I'm welcome, not feeling like there's beauty there to be found, not feeling like there is something there that harmonizes with what we create and do. It's just been, as Westerners, it's been dissolved to this lowest common denominator, where they sell plastic trinkets to fill the holes in our hearts where a spirit is supposed to go. And then the plastic trinket on top of everything else, not only does it not fill the hole in our heart where the spirit is supposed to go, but then it's designed obsolescence. It's designed to break. So you got to buy a new trinket in another week. But I'll pass it back if you have any thoughts on what I said or not, and then we can continue with the great line of questioning.
I completely agree with you, of course, because like as you were saying, if people are like so empty inside, they can only feel their emptiness with what the mass media is feeding them, with lies and lies and lies, and all this in over sexualization, with all this slave morality about us feeling guilty. You know what? Today I was like browsing Facebook, and a video appeared. I think it's a program which is famous in America. It's a program where there's the wife of Will Smith. I don't know her name, honestly, but she basically interviews white women who feel guilty for being white, and so they adopted kids from other, as you were saying, biospheres. and they have married men from other biospheres. And basically, they keep on saying for 20 minutes or something that they feel guilty, that they cannot understand what the community of the Black people in America is feeling, what they have been through. It's incredible because they have been so evil. And of course, white men are the most evil of all because they are at the top of the of the pyramid. They are at the power. They cannot absolutely understand what all the others are feeling. And sometimes I just walk around here in my city, or when I was in Germany, or whenever I visited any other country in Western Europe, and so poor people on the streets begging for food and money, all the unemployment rates growing up year by year, all the men who are self-destroying themselves with drugs and porn and sex. And I ask myself, where is our privilege now? How can we keep on be fed on this slave morality, on this guilt, this sense of guilt, and living always with this kind of sense of guilt, like we are those who have destroyed everything, everybody, and nothing belongs to us, nothing should belong to us, and it would be better for us to just disappear into the oblivion. How can people of our belonging to our folks accept this? They can accept this because they have no consciousness, and when you don't have any consciousness, you are just going to take the easiest road. And right now, the easiest road is to be a slave, is to say yes to every violence that is committed to you and to your community. Because they have made you believe, thanks to all the propaganda done in schools, which is like, that's hell. I mean, hell begins in schools, let's just say it. And I can tell you about my experience. I mean, I was born in the 90s. And when I was a kid, it was, I think, early 2000. But I remember that when I was around 7 or 8 years old, I had an essay to write, because when we do Italian lesson, we usually have very short essays to write to improve our language. And the question of this essay was, think about the fact, what would you do if you were a refugee fleeing from another country? How would you feel here? Like, I was 7 years old. I remember like saying, why are they doing this question to us and to kids? And when I was then in high school, like I was about 14 or 15 years old, and I was doing a French course in the afternoon, that was the first day. And on the first day, they put a song called Métis, which is called Je suis Métis, which means I am a mixed person. I've decided not to go anymore after that day, because I wasn't it's not that I was into politics when I was 14 years old, but I already couldn't understand, why am I studying French and am I seeing this like mixed people dancing and saying, oh, je suis métis, I am a mixed person. I want to study French. I don't want to study them. They are not French people. And why are they doing this? I wanted to know more about the French language and the French culture, not about this kind of modern Babylonia,
Yeah, it used to be, and it should be, that if you study a language, you also learn something about the people and the culture when you study that language. I actually studied Italian in high school, and we learned about Italy, day-to-day life in Italy, and Italian customs and ways of being, because you can't totally separate that from language anyway. Language is not just this neutral computer programming. It comes from a people, and it relates
Absolutely.
to the day-to-day experience of the people. So you have to understand the culture as well.
Well, imagine this. When I was in Germany, I was studying at the university. I have made a 6-month course of Swedish. And I remember once that the teacher was just teaching us about words related to transportation. And there was a guy, who asked, why do you write bus with 2 S? And he said in German, SS. And then he said, oh, sorry, because he had said SS, like relating to the Schutzstaffen. And imagine, like, in what kind of era are we living in when you need to be sorry just because you have pronounced two letters? This is the state of Germany right now. I mean, Italy is not that far away from that state, but Germany is truly going down.
Yes, and if anyone wants to hear about that, I put your link to your first appearance. You talked about your time in Germany for 4 years, and then because we were discussing Protect Beauty, I also put your Facebook page. You were talking about feeling welcome. Jason was talking about the ads in the big chain store we have here in the United States called Target. I can tell you when I visit the Protect Beauty Facebook page, your page that you've created and you administrate, I feel very welcome there. I should say it's very, and a lot of it is celebrating beautiful women. And someone who is cynical might say, well, of course you're a man and you're going to want to look at women, but it's in a wholesome way. And it's all along with architecture and geography, and all of it together is in a way that I would say is very healthy. And it's inspiring. It's very different. It's a very sad state of affairs and it reflects a lot about the modern world where people cannot make these distinctions. They think that because you're looking at a woman, or even if it's nude, like let's say ancient nude art, they'll say, oh, it's pornography. Like they think everything like that is pornography.
Yeah.
Because they can't even see the difference because they've been so poisoned.
Yes, because we have grown up in an over-sexualized society. That's why it's a society where men think that the only pleasure in the world is to have sex with multiple women, and women think that the only way to attract men's love is to be over-sexualized. And we see that in all these modern Instagram models. Like instead of studying, doing stuff to improve themselves, to improve their culture, they are all empty. They just think about looking all the same and getting all this attention. And then once they reach a certain point, like when they hit their 40 or 50 years old, and they have no family because men don't want any family anymore, because they don't want any kids anymore, and they are alone, left alone completely, and they cannot get the attention anymore because they are not young and beautiful like they were when they were 20 and they were posting pictures on Instagram. You get rates of suicide. And this is very, very sad because it's affecting the Western world a lot. Really a lot. I've read multiple articles coming from the UK where there were a lot of cases of women who were successful in their career, so who had no economic issue, so they had a good life, we could say, as outsiders, but they couldn't find a man, they didn't have any kids, and they didn't feel complete in their life. So then you get depression, you get alcoholism, you get drugs addiction, and all of this crap that it's destroying our folks. But luckily, we are still here to bring the light, so we shouldn't be too much too pessimistic about it. Absolutely, I'm optimistic. Times are changing. I'm optimistic.
They are, and people can't get answers other places, so they're coming to people like us because we see things in a very balanced way. Hopefully, not saying we have it all figured out, but in terms of the general trends people see in the world, when they go to the mainstream, when they go to the approved organs of communication, more and more people are realizing that it's a house of cards, or it's, you like myth, we like stories and narrative as well. It's like the emperor's new clothes. I use that story a lot. It's a very telling example, a very potent example right now. And what you said about men and women, Jason and I, it's something we speak about here a lot too. It's come up in the past, and it's all on us to kind of change ourselves first internally and reset the incentives out there, because it's kind of this race to the bottom, like you were saying. Men are trained to think that they have to look to their worst instincts or what they want in a woman, or how they look for women. And then the women want to attract that, so they go lower, and each side keeps going lower and lower and lower.
Yes.
And we need to turn that around and keep going higher and higher and higher, because the attention that we give to each other is creating this cycle. And so again, I commend what you do on Protect Beauty, because even when you show a picture of a woman and it's to a man, it's very attractive, right? But it's in a different kind of a way. It's not in a pornographic kind of a way. It's in an inspiring way. It makes you want to be like, oh wow, like what kind of man do I need to be with a woman of that quality? Those are the important questions, not just, oh, look at this like it's a piece of meat, but what do I need to be? And let me appreciate this beauty. And then there's versions of that women have for men, like we say. It keeps going on and on and on. When we were talking a little bit before about fire, sword, and plow, you spoke so eloquently about the themes of your essay from the folk book, how boundaries and love and law and meaning are, all of these things work together for a people. Maybe we've already hit these points, but I wanted to add a word that we hear sometimes in English, and that I think you mentioned in that essay, and it made me think about this concept of commonwealth, and how when there's true boundaries and people know they're connected to each other, they know that what they work together, all of the value and the wealth that they create in their nation, there's an aspect to it where it all belongs to them. And even some of our states in the United States were technically founded as commonwealths. Massachusetts is called a commonwealth. Jason's home, Virginia, the state of Virginia, one of the very first places where British settlers landed, of course, when they crossed the Atlantic, is a commonwealth. And that is a word that we don't hear a lot anymore. But I hadn't really even thought about it, but when you mentioned it in your essay alongside all of these other concepts.
Yeah, it was a citation of Cicero.
Yes, exactly. It was Cicero. It hit me in a deeper way. I got it in a deeper way. I don't know if there's anything else to say about that, but I wanted to at least mention it.
Yeah, we could read maybe the citation so that the people who are like watching us know what we are talking about.
Yeah.
Let me just
as you do that, I'll say this too, in terms of language, because that comes up a lot, and Jason, of course, is very good at coining these phrases that focus into these words, all of these concepts. Because when people want to hear the explanation, we can get up and do a show for a long time or write an essay. But you need, like you said, whether it's the image of the beauty, like you were talking about, or just a word that acts as this arrow that contains all of these concepts. We know that Jason has a great talent for that. And so the word you were talking about before, there's two. Sometimes we say it a little quickly, so I understand people might hear it a certain way. But biosphere is a word, and that means, I guess you could think of that as the boundary. But it's also biospirit, speaks exactly to what you're saying in your essay. That is actually, I think, the word you were saying before, Jason, is biospirit. And it shows that there's this holistic connection between our body and our spirit, mind, body, soul. I know that that's, again, a very classical order, ancient order way of seeing things, and seeing that we're all of these things together. We're not just meat robots, like, modern materialists like to say that. But that's the term. They relate to each other, of course. And as I said, we say them quickly. Sometimes people hear biosphere, but it's biospirit.
Okay. Yeah. Also, in our tradition and in our esoteric philosophical view, we are, of course, formed by different bodies. We are formed by the material body. We are formed by the soul, by the mind, so by the intelligence, and by the spiritual body. So we are like formed by 4 bodies. So of course, every body is related to each other. So when a body, for example, doesn't work well, like for example, if we feed our material body with junk food, with instincts, if we act like animals, basically, like many men nowadays are doing, by living for working, producing, consuming, and dying, then all the other bodies are going to be affected. Because if your material body, which is your body, should be treated like a temple or like a holy place, if you mistreat it, then your soul is going to suffer, meaning that you are going to suffer, that your feelings will be low, that you will get into depression, or that you will be easily angry, that you will get into violent actions. And of course, your mind and spirit will be affected as well, because they are never going to wake up, they are never going to be enlightened. Your mind is never going to think in a clean way. It's always going to be blurry in your mind. It's always going to be a chaos in your mind. So you're never going to think straight. And of course, your spirit will always remain let's say, an obsolete body. So you're just going to be condemned to multiple reincarnations until you finally understand something about yourself and about the environment you're surrounded by, and about all the other realities we are surrounded by.
And
a man, of course, that has this kind of consciousness cannot be fooled. It cannot be fooled by this kind of by this modern propaganda and by this modern morality. It cannot be fooled because it knows the truth.
That's absolutely right. You're speaking our language. We have a quick question from the chat too. I don't know if you're looking at the YouTube chat.
Oh no, I'm not.
Okay. Yeah. It's a lot to kind of do both. We try to juggle, but a woman named Sarah, who's a very good friend of the show. She was also on the birthday party last week. Part of Hearth and Helm. I would love to introduce you to, because she does a lot with Northern spirituality. She works with other women. They talk about a lot of things specific to women, motherhood, clean eating, like you're talking about right now, all the kinds of things you're talking about. She's very much enjoying the show. She was asking, we talked about your Facebook page, but she just wanted to know, and I'm curious too, if you have a Telegram channel.
I have a Telegram channel, but it's just dedicated to Pietas, to the Pietas International. If you mean a Telegram channel dedicated to Protect Beauty, I don't.
Okay, and we're going to talk about that organization. We're going to talk about that organization in a few minutes. But is that all in Italian because of that? Is that all in Italian, or is it also in English?
You mean Pietas? No, we have made the page. The Telegram channel, we have Pietas International, which is in English.
Okay. All right. Well, so we'll definitely get that and include it in your links when we post this, when we archive this on the afterparty.tv and our own individual sites. But before we get to hearing a little about the Pietas organization, did you want to read something from the essay about Commonwealth and Cicero you were mentioning?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to read the short citation so that people watching this show can understand what you were referring to, of course. Okay. So it's a very short. So Cicero wrote in his De Repubblica, a republic or commonwealth is the wealth or common interest of the people. Every assemblage of men, however, gathered together without an object, is not the people, but only an assemblage of the multitude associated by common concept for reciprocal rights and reciprocal usefulness. The leading cause of this congregating is not to be ascribed so much to its weakness as to the social principle innate with man. Our species is not a solitary and wandering one. So here commonwealth is intended as another word for republic. And republic was intended to be good not only to benefit people who were at the power, who were making political decisions. It was meant to benefit the entire population, and that can be referred to with the word of commonwealth, because basically commonwealth is a common benefit for the entire folk. And you can give this common benefit when the folk has a common goal, which is that to continuing the folk's traditions, continuing the folk's culture, and of course the folk's genetics, we can say.
Yeah, what struck me is that bit from the beginning where it says it's not just a random assemblage of people. It's not just like if you get enough bodies that's a populace. It's, as we keep saying, it's all of the, just like within someone. You were explaining a few moments ago about the connection of all these different levels that make you a person. It's the same thing in a group of people as well. There has to be the mental and spiritual aspect, everything together, forming together. On that note, maybe this is a good time to bring up, as you said, pietas is a concept, and it's kind of the virtue and everything encompassed in your essay that you've been talking about. So if you want to explain a little bit more, if there's more to say about pietas, I'd like to hear about the concept, but it's also, as you just said, it's the name, the Pietas Internazionale, right? In Italian.
Yeah, in Italian, it's correct. It's correct.
Is a group that's working to revive these folkways, these Roman folkways. So, as I said, if there's more to talk about the actual concept about Pietas, please tell us that, and then please tell us about specifically your work with the organization. And this is very exciting. The book that you translated into English that's being published in the spring.
Yeah. Well, pietas as a concept, as I was saying, refers to the dutiful love towards your partner, towards the fatherland, and towards the gods. So this is the greatest virtue that a man can have. It's pietas. And that is also why the association I'm part of decided to name it after this concept, which is also a deity. Pietas is, according to the Roman views, everything has a divine nature. We have deities, as I was saying, for example, with the god Terminus. It's the god of limits. We even have a god for limits. We have a god or a goddess for everything. And we also have a goddess to represent this high virtue. The association Pietas, which in Italian is called Associazione Tradizionale Pietas, was born about 15 years ago, exactly to promote, to spread, and reevaluate the classical culture in regard to the numerous aspects of the sound values of Greece and Rome and of the Greco-Roman spirituality. The association used and still does organize conferences. In the past, we did this a lot, like face-to-face, you know. In the last year, we have done it mostly through conferences. And we also organize conventions. We also publish a periodical called Pietas. And we promote any kind of initiative that is in line with the association's goals. As for the section related to religion, because this is not only an association dedicated to culture and traditions, but mostly to the classical religion, the classical traditional path, which has seen an exponential development over the last years. With an intense growth, in particular in the last 5 years, I would say, with the building of temples in different parts of Italy. We have temple in the northeastern part of Italy. We have temples in Lazio, and we also built a temple last year in July in Sicily, in Palermo, the city where I come from. And we also collaborate with analogous foreign organizations such as Tirsos from Greece and YSEE from Greece as well. And right now we are also developing contacts with other groups from Lithuania as well, for example. And we have also received a lot of support from Hinduists from India. They're very happy to know that there is currently a pagan revival in Europe, because as you might know, if you have ever studied the history of India, They have also suffered the invasion from the Muslims and the Christians, and they had a lot of fights against them because both these Abrahamic sects tried, as they did in Europe, to remove the traditions, the cults of the natives from India, to impose their beliefs on them. But apart from that, as a result from this growth that we had in Italy, the need arose for a legally recognized institution for classical religion, and which is the reason why the association Pietas, founded last year in December, the 9th of December 2020, the religious association Pietas Comunità Gentile, which means Gentile community. Now, in the last 2 days, I have had some discussions with people on the internet because I've shared an article about Pietas, and they were saying, no, you shouldn't use the word Gentile because the word Gentile comes from Hebrew, and this is a negative word towards pagans. Now, let's be clear. The word Gentile, and it's a word that still exists in the English language with gentle. You still have this word, which comes from Latin. Gentile comes from Latin, it comes from gens, and it's directly related to the concept of gens, folk, of genius. So your spirit, your spiritual guardian, or the spiritual guardian of a place, like the genius loci, and to genes, so genetics. And this comes from the Proto-Indo-European gene, which is to generate. And in fact, we still have nowadays in many Indo-European languages like English, the word generate, or genius, or genetics, or genes, etc., etc. What happened? Simply, the tribe from the desert took this word, gave it another meaning, and Gentile started meaning something that it was not intended to be. It started meaning goy, so somebody who doesn't belong to the tribe of the desert. But this is the same thing as pagan. Pagan, we know that this is a negative word because it refers to as people living in the countryside, and people living in the countryside are ignorant people, and of course they would believe into the folk tales or in fairies or stuff like that. But pagans originally just meant people living in the pagus, so people living in the countryside. And we must be thankful to people living in the countryside, in the pagus, because they are the ones who, better than than the people of the city, than the citizens, kept the traditions intact. All the folk tales that we know, it's thanks to people that live in the countryside. All the ancient traditions, like many ancient traditions that we have here in Sicily, can be found among folks living on the mountains, not among folks living in the city. So I just wanted to point out this issue, because probably in the Anglophone sphere, or in the Anglo-Saxon countries, this word Gentile has indeed a negative meaning, but in Italy we do not feel it this way, and it was not originally intended to be a negative word. And why am I saying this? Why am I pointing out this? Because I don't think that we should give the power to people who do not belong to our folks and to our kin to decide the meaning of our own words. Because once they decided the meaning of our words, they are going to decide what we did and what we did not in the past, what are our good and bad deeds, to whom our arts or our architecture belong, etc., etc. They are just going to change history. We shouldn't allow them to do that.
I mentioned in the chat, and we'll have this linked when the show is posted, your first TAP episode from July 2019. I remember speaking about this, speaking about that word gentile, and you went into it and why that is in the name of the organization. And as you rightly said, it's related to the English gentleman, which doesn't just mean being soft and kind. It can refer to being refined, but it also was aristocracy, and that you were merging or synthesizing all of these different elements, as we've been talking about, being a well-rounded person, so that you could protect the boundary when it was time to do that as well. I'm really, that word, the gens, right, and related to so much, the etymology with genitori is parents.
Yes, correct. Those who generated, of course.
You generate creativity, you generate, the next generations. There's a genius, and in a more classical sense, it wasn't that a person, like a 1 in a million person, could be a genius, an artistic genius or a scientific genius. It's that you actually, individually, you have a genius. It's almost like your higher calling or your best talent that you could tap into. And likewise, an overall people has a genius. There's a spirit. And as I'm listening to you talk, I'm thinking to myself that all of these words related to that root, gens, G-E-N-S, and related to this word gentile that you're talking about, is a little bit like the original biospirit. It's a little bit like Jason's term, because it's, if you think about it, there's a physical element with genes and being parents, but also the genius, the spirit that you're tapping into, the best of yourself as an individual or a people is tapping into its collective spirit, its folk soul. So there's a lot contained in that word gentile. And as you said, it does relate to this word Gentile, which in that form is, yes, that is a term that another people uses for us. And I don't recommend, and I know Jason doesn't recommend using that word in the current context, because it's you don't want another person defining yourself. But it does speak to something that you said on the first tap episode, which is just very simply, it does indicate that there was a recognition that we were different people with different ways and a different spirit. And that's fine. That's okay. There's that boundary.
I also don't think that's a problem.
Is that other people recognize it, and in the current day and age, we don't. That is the issue. Again, you spoke beautifully to that in the first episode a little while ago. But maybe before we take questions from the chat, if you could just say one more thing, because we're talking about this word genius. I know you're interested in someone I've read a little bit too, Rudolf Steiner, or to say it in German, Rudolf Steiner, spoke about each people having a genius, and that's related to this word gentile we keep talking about. And what do you see in that, in all of, even within Europe, all of the different peoples having these different characteristics? And I know you mentioned Rudolf Steiner in the...
Yes, I've mentioned Rudolf Steiner because I think that specific quote is beautifully made, and it basically sums up, I think, our thoughts whenever
Tell us about the quote, because it relates to a question people get a lot about how we're told that we can kind of get beyond this and just be a human. But he kind of bridges that. He squares that circle very well.
Exactly. Because, I mean, the moment I read that quote, I was like, oh, finally somebody who sums up what I'm thinking whenever I hear people saying, no, I have no connection with my folk. This is just a social construct. There is no connection with my ancestors at all. I don't have a culture. I don't have a tradition. I don't have anything. And genetics doesn't exist like we intend it to be. We are all the same. And he says, if I might read the quote as well. Okay. So many, no doubt, will say, oh, I have entirely freed myself from all lineal and racial connections. I only want to be a human being and nothing but a human being. To this one must reply, who then brought you to this freedom? Was it not your family who placed you in the world where you now stand? Have you not your lineage, your nation, your race to thank for being what you are? They have brought you up, and if now exalted above all prejudice, you are one of the light bringers and benefactors of your stock, and even of your race, it is to their upbringing that you owe it. Yes, even when you say you are nothing but a human being, even the fact that you have so become, you owe to the spirits of your communities. I love that. And of course, Rudolf Steiner is talking about a very ancient concept, which was very well known by the Romans and by the Greeks. Every person, as you were saying, Jared, as a genius. This genius, as we were talking about in my first appearance, can be in its good form or in its bad form. In its Agathodiamond form, which would be the Romulus form in our Roman tradition, or in its Capodaimon form, depending on how you act in your life and the decisions that you make. Not only has every person a genius with different qualities, but also every folk has a genius for the Romans, and also every place has a genius loci for the Romans. In fact, it is well known that when the Romans invaded the Celto-Germanic lands, do you know what they did? They performed rituals in honor of the foreign god and goddesses living in the Celto-Germanic countries to get the favor of those gods and goddesses. Because of course they recognize that different places develop different forces. And if you want to gain a connection with that specific force, you need to respect it and to feed it. And you could feed this force through ritual offerings, such as incense or animal sacrifice in the past. And this is a very beautiful concept, which unfortunately has been kind of forgotten by modern people who, as I was saying, just think that everything is relative and there is no connection with ourselves being part of a group of people, with ourselves being born in a specific country. This is not the case, not from a logical point of view, and neither from a metaphysical point of view, because different places have different forces and different peoples have different characteristics. There is the reason why we see all these different folks in Europe having developed in a different way throughout history. If there was no different from a physical or metaphysical point of view, we would have all developed the same, which is not the case.
And before we wrap up, what I mentioned a few minutes ago, if you could just tell people about the book that you've translated that's coming out soon.
Sure. Our Solar Master, which is also the founder of the association and the chief of the Gentile community, wrote a book about, I'd say 15 years ago or something. And during these last 2 years, we have worked on its translation. This book is a kind of introduction into the Roman tradition, into the Roman esoteric path. We will handle aspects such as the foundation of Rome that we talked about the symbolism behind the foundation of Rome. We will talk about the sacred city, the temple, the erection of temples, and the metaphysical meaning in the geometrical structure of the temple. We have talked about the myth interpretations, in particular that of Perseus and Medusa, and that of Ulysses. We have talked about the Aeneid, the clocks, the Georgics, other classical writings. And we have also talked, of course, about the spiritual path, which kind of connection we do have with the ancient strands. There's the whole story there, because we are not revival group. When you say like revival group, we usually think about, at least in Italy, people dressing up like as Roman soldiers and going out and say, I'm called Lucius Primus, etc., and just pretending like they were old soldiers fighting, blah, blah, and that's it. we do not do that kind of stuff because we are actually following the spiritual path of our forefathers. So we are actually doing rituals, we are doing like fasting, we are into Pythagoras teachings, mathematics, and philosophy, and all of these things related to the spiritual development of a person.
Yeah, it has all the dimensions as we've been talking about. And you mentioned it's a short book, only about 120 pages, but very condensed, right?
No. It's become it's actually longer than that because we have added a lot of pieces. Like one of the stuff that we have added is the myth interpretation, as I was saying, of Perseus and Medusa. There was like a short interpretation before, but right after we, you know, that in New York there has been this artist Garbati who made the statue of Medusa with the head of Perseus, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" And this is a terrible kind of symbolism because when Perseus kills Medusa, this is not a patriarchal kind of myth where you see men beating and killing women. This is, of course, not the meaning. The meaning of this myth in the Roman tradition and in the Greek tradition, when you see a man and a woman, usually the man represents the spirit who has to overcome obstacles. These obstacles are, of course, represented by demons, by monsters, by beasts, and Medusa is a monster. Because do you know why Medusa became Medusa? Medusa went to Minerva and asked her, "How can I reach wisdom? How can I be as wise as a god?" And Minerva answered that she would have received the answer when the time would come. Then Neptune went to Medusa to make love with her, and Medusa refused the love of the god. When he refused the love of the god, he of course refused a way of gaining wisdom and knowledge, thus becoming a monster. Perseus, who is the spirit and needed to free Andromeda, who represents the soul, has of course to kill the monsters, which in this case represents the ego, the bad thoughts, the bad deeds, in order to free the soul and to purify it. And this is the same.
I'm sorry, is there symbolism with the turning to stone when you look in Medusa's eyes, where because she refused the wisdom of the gods, it's purely materialist? Is there symbolism related to that? Like when we turn to stone, it's when you turn away from the spirit?
Well, when Medusa turns man into stone, it means that the man cannot have any development at all because it has become stone. So it has become just a material body.
Yes.
It cannot be freed anymore. And this is what your ego does. Your ego makes you believe this and that you are this and that you just need to identify with your material body. And as long as you keep on identifying just with your material body, just with materiality and just with relativism, then you are not going to accomplish anything in this life. And it doesn't mean that when your life ends, then everything ends. You are going to be reincarnated into another man, or maybe an animal, or maybe just something else according to the consciousness reached in this life. And we see, as well as I was saying, in many myths, like for example, Ulysses has to fight to go back to his homeland to free Penelope. So Ulysses always represents the spirit who fights to free the soul. Penelope had the problem with the Proci because the Proci wanted to marry her and they wanted to steal her from Ulysses, and they kept on saying, Ulysses will never come back to you. So putting all these bad thoughts in Penelope's mind, but Penelope represents the purified soul, and the purified soul cannot be attacked by bad thoughts. That's why she waited for years and years for Ulysses to come.
Well, when the book comes out, we will definitely share it on our social media, and we'll add it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're very excited about this. I want to get a copy. Maybe we'll have you back on to get even more deeply into it. And we'll certainly have the link when it comes out. I'll add it to the post of this episode.
Thank you.
Right now, once I'll go back and I'll add that link. And right now, for anyone listening live, as we wrap up, I will again add the Protect Beauty Facebook page, Ilenia admins, and the Associazione internazionale.
Associazione.
Associazione. I'm
Yeah.
rusty on my Italian. Yeah, the tradizionale pietas.
Yeah.
I will add that in the chat. But Jason, do we have any comments or questions from the chat?
We do have a few. It's been a magnificent tap as always, but we are, folks, getting close to tapping out. So if you have anything, you better jump in quickly. We do have over here on Cash App, Blue-Eyed Bear has financially gifted $20. Thank you so very much for that kind financial gift and saying everything that he wanted to say with those $20. And we'll refresh that to make sure that we don't miss anybody over there. We have some financial gifts over here as well on Entropy. Bigot Smalls is in with us here today and has a $3 financial gift and writes, "Relax around us." I like that. We're relaxing today. Bigot Smalls back again with another $3. Thank you so much. Writes, what does the guest think of our Temple to Lincoln? I guess it's the United States. You have Lincoln, which unusual in the United States. He's actually sitting in what appears to be a throne where the other statues of the founding fathers are always standing. Do you have any thoughts on that whatsoever?
Well, I know that also in the creation of the United States, there has been a big influence from the Roman world. In fact, we see the Capitoline hill, like the Campidoglio, which also is present in the United States. And we also see the White House being built in the image of a temple. So I think that the founding fathers had a great respect and admiration towards Rome, as well as for the fact that, for example, the animal that represents the United States is an eagle. And the animal that represented Rome was an eagle as well. So there are many references to it, as well as to the great attachment to freedom, which was, of course, the basis of our folk, and the great attachment and respect to law, which I think Americans feel in a very strong way.
Well, we certainly do, and it was clearly this heritage of our people, stretching back throughout time, that our founding fathers, brilliantly educated and gifted as they were tapping into, and created something quite beautiful that has been usurped by anti-white demons, as we know. An interesting, just side note, and we'll continue with the financial gifts and the questions so that we can tap out. And it was getting late over there. Is that Benjamin Franklin wanted the rather than the eagle to be the national animal, if you will, he wanted it to be the turkey. And the reason why he wanted it to be the turkey was because the turkey is very well known for its intelligence. It's very difficult to hunt. It has color vision. It can actually, I believe, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, it can smell. Hunters that actually go after turkeys, they have to wear full camouflage. They have to disguise their scent, and they also have to be silent because they apparently also have acute hearing. It was those reasons, and also because the turkey provided so much food and etc. for the young America, that Benjamin Franklin thought it should be the turkey. He also did not like the fact that the eagles are wont to eat items that are maybe newly dead. So they didn't necessarily kill them, but they will gladly pick up something that maybe has newly died, and he thought that was just despicable. But that was Benjamin Franklin.
No, eagles don't usually do that, as long as I know, because I've studied a little bit of their behavior. Because we also have some eagles here in Sicily, and usually they pick fresh, like they kill the animals. They must be starving for picking freshly dead animals, as far as I know, at least.
The carrion.
Not rotting.
I knew that cows fed it on like anything.
I'll just add, I know we have to wrap up very, very briefly on this bit of like little funny facts as well. Well, this one isn't, I wouldn't say funny. I think it was Jefferson. He actually wanted on, one of them wanted on the back of our currency, Hengst and Horsa. So this, you talk about Rome, Romulus, Remus, twin gods founding the city. This is a Saxon brothers that goes back to our Anglo-Saxon heritage. Now, I mentioned that just briefly because I've shared this on social media before, how important symbols are, how important imagery is. What if just that one bit of American history was different? And on the back of our bills, on the back of our currency, let me know if my sound's okay, by the way, too. I saw some comments about that earlier.
It's a little fuzzy at the moment.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know why.
Now you're back. Now you're back.
If it's going in and out, it has to be an internet thing. I don't even know what I'm paying for, but I'll have to call my internet people again. But at any rate, I don't know if leaning back a little bit helps, because I don't know if being too loud screws it up. But anyway, very briefly, if the back of our bills, the back of our currency, if it had these two Saxon brothers that are part of this creation myth of certain Germanic tribes, that one bit, if that one thing was there, just that one thing was there, how much harder it would be for them to be doing all of the confusion that they're trying to engender right now, and saying that America has nothing to do with its European heritage, and particularly the Anglo-Saxon heritage. Just that one thing, if the image of those brothers were on our bills, it would make it much harder to get that across to people. So when you hear us talk about symbols, when you hear us talk about imagery, that's why. Because as Ilenia said, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And our current situation could have been different if for that one fact.
Yes.
Entirely possible.
I agree.
And Richard Wagner is with us, ladies and gentlemen, the great Richard Wagner, and financially gifting $25. Thank you, dear brother. And he writes here, Jason, you mentioned in Born Guilty that you had asked the Lord to give you the power to heal people. I believe your wish was fulfilled. For your books will heal our race and bring us eternal victory. Prometheus Rising healed and inspired me, and I have composed a new piece called Prometheus Rising. My God, Richard Wagner, what a glorious, absolutely glorious testimonial that is to going. Thank you, dear brother. That is fantastic. We won't be able to, I will download it though, but we're tapping out now, brother, but that is magnificent. I want to read that. Just, Jason, you mentioned in Born Guilty that you had asked the Lord to give you the power to heal. Now, the reason, just folks, for context, was that I had a very sickly sibling that was not supposed to live. And he was among others. He was put among others who were quite ill. And so I had prayed to the Lord that if I could do anything, it would be to heal sick children like my brother. He goes on here to say, Richard does, I believe your wish was fulfilled, for your books will heal our race and bring us eternal victory. My God, what absolutely humbling thing. Thank you, brother. Prometheus Rising healed and inspired me. And by the way, just Richard has talked about the use of going free with his sister and bringing her around to going free and healing. Has inspired me, he writes, and I composed a new piece called Prometheus Rising. Richard Wagner, ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you're here on Sunday. We will absolutely tomorrow be playing this brilliant new piece. I know it's the piece that he made for us as a gift several weeks ago on the piano was, in my mind, the equivalent of Chopin, which he had played for us as a gift as well for my book Crucible. So thank you so much, dear brother, Richard Wagner. And let's get the raucous emojis.
Does he have a YouTube?
He does not. No, not as far as I know. Richard, if you have a YouTube, please add the link in the question widget. But I do not believe he does, brother.
Or other links where the music would be. Let us know.
Yes, please do. These have been just these files that he's videotaped himself, and he's placed my books up on the piano with the sheet music. And then played absolutely exquisitely. Like Comedies is another one that has done the same, and we're looking forward to our Russian friend, whose last name I cannot pronounce, and so I will not try. We're looking forward to the classical music that Andreas, going to be creating here soon. That's going to be set in the world of Prometheus Rising, Take Back Your Destiny, my book. But get those raucous emojis together, folks, for Ascended Practitioner, financially gifting $50 US. $50. Thank you, dear brother. Gosh, Ascended Practitioner has come in like a storm raining of rose petals down across the West. Thank you, dear brother. $50 US. And he writes, no comment, but I think you said all that you had to say with those $50. Thank you so much. We have in the question widget, as we run out of time and we're getting ready to tap out, we have, it's time to grow and learn, writes, it's only a matter of time before all nations and nationalities in the entire world start to emulate British authoritarian laws and police monitoring. Governments love making civil liberties harder. Well, the anti-whites are doing that all over the world, indeed. But we are pushing back with love, hope, and redemption and going free. Carlotta asks of our wonderful guest, what is her opinion on Salvini?
Do I really need to do that? Well, our politicians are almost all liars. Salvini started his campaign a bunch of years ago, where he said that he was against the European Union, he was against euros, he was against immigration, and he was against pretty much the left. And now he is at the government together with Mr. Draghi. Do you know who Mr. Draghi is? I suggest you to look for him. Okay. He has been the president. He's been the but he was not elected. Also because it's not a politician. This Mr. Draghi is an economist, and he has been from 2011 until 2019 the president of the Central European Bank. So I think you understand what kind of person I'm talking about. And he is now at the power, and Salvini is together with him and all the others parties. Everything he said, everything he promised was not kept. Like he went to the power together with the other party, the movement, the Five Stars movement. Then the Five Stars movement betrayed the Lega, and they went at the power together with the Democratic Party, which is I cannot express the disgust that I feel towards this Democratic Party. Is super leftist party, super leftist liberal party. It's disgusting. And what else? And nothing. This Salvini pretty much said that he was pro some things, then just lied about that, and now is not against that anymore. And his social medias are full of pictures showing him eating bread with Nutella and drinking coffee and writing bullshit about this current situation we are not allowed to talk about. And basically he is not against the European Union anymore. He says, oh, we should just change the European Union from within. The immigrants can be integrated as long as they respect Christianity, and as long as they respect our laws, then it's all fine. It's like your typical civic nationalist, liar. So I have a bad opinion about him. I mean, when he was young, when he was like 20 years old, he was also a communist. Like, you cannot really believe that guy.
I think that says about all. It's just about the politicians all across the West. Yeah. Sounds about right. We have Althea asking, will we ask you if you identify with Nushandora? Nessundora.
Nushandora. I think I don't understand. Sorry. Can you write it down, maybe in our chat, because I didn't understand.
The opera
character for an opera.
Yeah. The climatic. She's talking about her favorite part apparently is the climatic of Vincerio. We will win. part of the opera? I will write it into the live
Yeah,
chat.
thank you, because I didn't understand.
As I move on to the next questions, which are you an expert on Roman mythology?
Well, I wouldn't define myself as an expert, but I know many Roman myths. But no, I wouldn't say I'm an expert. Like,
we also have, well, I guess kind of Donning Armour's question was kind of answered already by you about the word pagan. And
okay.
so we'll swivel back around here and we see that Jonas has the question here asking, Ilenia, would you be willing to, I guess he meant to add the word translate here, Jason's book, Go Free, into Italian? I'm sure with your understanding of spirituality, you'd be perfect for the job. That's what he has. Thanks,
if Jason wants to reach out the Italian community, why not? It's up to you.
Very good. Well, thank you for that. We also have this is kind of a broad question, and you can answer it as narrowly as you want, as we are closing in on the end, and that is your thoughts on Evola.
Well, I've read Evola, and he was also a practitioner of the Roman tradition, but during that period, there were different esoteric strands. There were some esoteric strands going back to the ancient times, and in fact, the one that we come from is an ancient strand coming directly from a sacerdos in Neapel. And Evola also followed a kind of esoteric path related to the Roman tradition. But how can I say? I think he reached certain points of consciousness and of understanding of reality. But on some other hands, like on the other hand, I don't think he reached like the full comprehension of the whole like of the whole thing. So I would suggest to read him only if you are already into a spiritual path, and if you have experienced certain spiritual things, because otherwise I don't think you are going to fully understand his writings. That's it.
Very well said. And we're waiting for this to, we do have another financial gift over here. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I just wanted to, before we finish our meeting, I just wanted to know that I was very pleased to see that in the book Folk, there were a lot of paintings and images dedicated to Aeneas, as if he were like the mythological representation of the European man. I really love that. Like to see people coming from, the Anglo-Saxon sphere, having such an admiration towards this myth. Because I don't know how it is in your country, but for example, in our country, they have tried to interpret in a bad way the myth of Aeneas, because they say Aeneas was an immigrant coming to another country to seek for a better life, which is not the case, because as Virgil writes in the Aeneid, he was going back to his original country. In fact, I had written down, it was here, I had written down the Latin quote from Virgil's book, which is "Quero patriam et genus ab love magno, viam data fata secutus," which is, I seek the fatherland, Italy, and the cradle of my race, descended from the supreme Jupiter, following that prefixed fate. Which is completely in contrast to what modern journalists have tried to make us believe, like he's an immigrant seeking for a better life. No, he fought a war. And then because of a divine destiny, he had to go back to his homeland, the cradle of his race. And it makes me remember about the fact that there has been a great white flight in the US and in the UK, where a lot of whites have just left the cities because they couldn't live there anymore. And they went to live in small towns in the countryside. And I hope that one day we could be able to take the cities once again, because we are the founders of those cities. They belong to us. And we will be like Aeneas once again, taking back what's ours.
Yes, certainly no journalist of today would phrase things the way that he did and that you just beautifully relayed. Who, at the beginning, I missed what you said. Who was the Anglo-Saxon writer who wrote much about Aeneas and you appreciated that? I didn't hear who it was.
No, I meant from the folk book. From the folk. That there is a lot. I mean, also here, I think it's...
Yes. Tony, the editor from White People.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
It's
he
just beautiful.
in his introduction, he wove in a lot about Roman, and yeah, he uses Virgil's story as his frame. Yes.
For example.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You should know too that in the YouTube chat, Marco from the Pietas group is here. So we appreciate that someone from
he's a dear friend of mine.
He's here, and we're very happy to see that. And he's very happy to see that we here in the States and other people from around the world, the Western world, in our chat are taking such an interest in what you do. And the feeling is mutual. We love making these connections. So we love seeing people like him here, new people. And we're all learning about what we're doing together. It's a wonderful thing.
I think we have one more financial gift. It's from Blue Eyed Bear again. $20 more. Thank you very much, good brother. $20 more from Blue Eyed Bear. He writes, thank you, Jason, Jared, and Ilenia for the great tap. Well, thank you for being with us, and you are most welcome. And thank you for the gratitude. We are going to tap out, folks, but before we do, we're going to ask Ilenia to give us her final thoughts and let us know where folks can find her and anything she's working on right now. The floor is yours.
Okay. So guys, once again, the spirituality of a folk, it's vital essence. And without its own spirituality, this vital essence gets consumed and dies. If we have a strong spirituality, we will exist eternally as a folk. What we are lacking of nowadays is a real ethnic spirituality. So the Greeks and the Romans disappeared in the exact moment in which they have abandoned the Greek-Roman tradition to embrace and becoming worshippers of the tribe of the desert, of the spirituality of the tribes from the desert, whose religion is a real mortification for the spirit, while all the traditions of the European peoples are an exaltation of the spirit. And we see this in all our artistic artistic pieces coming from music or from paintings or from sculptures. So never forget that if we want to exist eternally, because we need to exist eternally to make this world a beautiful place, then we also need to be spiritually conscious of ourselves, of our environment, of our history, and of the value of our folk. And just to go back to Jasmine's question, yeah, you can find me on Protect Beauty. You can also follow the International Pietas page under the name of Pietas International. You can follow the regional pages of Pietas, such as Pietas Sicilia, which is the region I come from. You can also follow our Telegram channel, as we were saying, Pietas International. If you want, you can add me on my Instagram. It's a private Instagram. I don't post there often, but you can add me. I'm called there Filia Iononis. And what else? The book will be out in April, most likely, and I will let you know about it very soon. And just about the question, I've just read it now, Nessun Dorma from Turandot Opera. I love that opera. And the version of Pavarotti is amazing. So thanks for mentioning this.
Yes, well, thank you for answering it. And Mr. George, you are up.
Well, I just want to thank Ilenia again for this wonderful talk and helping us celebrate 3 years of TAP last week on our birthday party. It's always great.
Yeah.
I hope that people got a lot out of today. I saw a lot of interest from the chat and the projects that you do. I just, again, put the Pietas group and the Protect Beauty Facebook page that you admin in the chat. And yes, please do keep us posted about the book translation into English and when it comes out, hopefully April, like you said, and we'll have to include those links as well. As for me, my site is thegreatorder.com, and that is everything that I do. It goes through there, and all the different social media goes through there. I am now on Odyssey. Jason's on Odyssey. We're trying that platform, but we know we had to make our own platforms, and right now, at least we have our own websites. So please do make sure that you bookmark our own websites. Again, mine is thegreatorder.com. Jason has nowhiteguilt.org. And together we have the afterparty.tv, where all of these different shows and live streams are archived as well. We have a mailing list. We do not mail too often, maybe once every couple of months, just as a digest. But it is important that if there was a real bad event and one day all of our social media was taken out at once, that would be one of the only ways we have to communicate with you. So please do get on the afterparty.tv mailing list. Our telegrams right now seem like a reasonably stable place, but again, we never really know what's really going on with these social media platforms. So we have to be nimble. We have to be a movable feast. We have to remember that it's the community that's primary. Our focus is not to the platform. It's not about YouTube or Telegram or this one or that one. It's about the community. The Golden One made a good video recently about that, how it's hard for people to break habits. You know, they think of the platform first and not the creator first. But please try to get in that habit of thinking creator first, community first. And please do share this as well. We're very shadow banned, but we continually need to grow by your word of mouth, by you telling people face to face or just sharing links in forums or emailing people about what we do here, trying to have the high quality conversations with people, good people like Ilenia here, who are doing advocacy work and who are rehabilitating our culture. So thank you again, and love to you all. And Jason will bring us out. And Jason, you have some plans this evening. What are your fun plans this evening?
Well, at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to be on with the wonderful James Edwards on the Political Cesspool. You can find that if you are not on one of if you're not in one of the locations where they broadcast over the radio in the United States. You can find it on thepoliticalcesspool.org, thepoliticalcesspool.org. I'll be with him for about 20 minutes. Remember, it's radio, folks, so it's not like here. We keep getting interrupted by commercials on radio. So I'm afraid that's just the way it is. You'll get to hear me speak in lightning speed. I was a wonderful tap today. I had a marvelous time, and I'm using that word marvelous specifically because over here on DLive, as I'm monitoring all of the 9 platforms that we are streaming on, and a big hello to everyone who is watching on Twitch. Arthur over on DLive said, Ilenia is a most marvelous guest, extremely engaging. Thank you to all 3. Well, thank you so much, Arthur, for those kind words. A big thank you to everybody who participated in the live chat today, and a big hello to everybody who stood back as wallflowers, whether you are here as during the live stream or in replay. Feel free to speak up whenever you like. A big heartfelt thank you to everyone who financially gifted over the course of the stream and asked questions for our magnificent guest, Ilenia. And of course, big thank you to Ilenia, coming back 2 weeks right in a row, came for our birthday, 3rd birthday. Well, hope she'll come for the rest of our birthdays. Who knows? She's a wonderful lady. They're doing great work over there in Italy. This is the birth, the beauty, and the light that we look for in the rise of the sun in the West. I love every single one of you folks, and we look forward to seeing you all again next time on Tap.